Usually, people point to the Hundred Years' War as the ultimate test of human endurance. But 1492 marked the end of a conflict that began in 711, a struggle that defined life for 25 generations and lasted 781 years. It's known as the Reconquista. History books traditionally frame these 8 centuries as the ultimate cross versus crescent crusade, a binary righteous struggle for the future of Europe. The reality was far more cynical. For centuries, lords on both sides routinely ignored their creeds, forming cross-faith alliances and complex trade deals to secure power over their own neighbors. But the way this localized power struggle finally concluded created a massive surplus of military momentum. Redirecting that energy would change the trajectory of an entirely different continent across the globe. In 711, the Iberian Peninsula was ruled by the Visigoths. While they appeared wealthy and centralized on paper, the kingdom was actually paralyzed by internal, personal vendettas between noble families. Seeing an opportunity in the division, a Berber general named Tariq bin Ziyad crossed from North Africa with 7,000 men. He landed at the base of a massive rocky cliff and allegedly ordered his own ships to be burned, leaving his army with no option but conquest. When the Visigothic king Roderick finally met the invaders, his own nobles switched sides mid-battle to spite him. The kingdom collapsed almost instantly, and by 718, nearly the entire peninsula was absorbed into the Umayyad Caliphate as Al-Andalus. Only a small pocket of resistance survived in the freezing northern mountains of Asturias. A local warlord named Pelaya retreated deep into the valleys with a few hundred followers, ex-soldiers and farmers who refused to surrender. When the Umayyads sent a small task force to collect taxes from the mountain holdouts, Pelayo's men used the terrain to their advantage, raining down rocks and arrows from the cliffs of a narrow pass. In terms of casualties, it was a minor skirmish, but for the small resistance in the mountains, it proved that the new empire could be defeated, creating a survival blueprint that would be inherited by northern kings for centuries. By the 900s, the Muslim South had become a global superpower. The city of Córdoba was a beacon of wealth and learning, featuring advanced irrigation, hospitals, and libraries that dwarfed anything found in the rest of Europe. But this golden age depended on a unity that couldn't last. In 1009, a brutal succession crisis triggered a civil war that effectively liquidated the central government. The unified caliphate shattered. The territory split into dozens of tiny independent city-states called taifas, each governed by a local prince more interested in his rivals than the northern threat. To gain an edge, these rival Muslim princes began paying heavy tributes to the northern Christian kings, essentially buying military protection to use against their fellow Muslims in the south. The greatest threat to Al-Andalus wasn't external religious fervor, but this internal fracturing. The Muslim city-states were quite literally funding the expansion of the armies that would eventually replace them. Powered by Muslim gold, the Christian kingdoms began a slow, grinding push south. In 1085, King Alfonso VI of Castile pulled off a major strategic win by capturing Toledo, the old Visigothic capital. The southern princes panicked and called for help from North Africa. 2 hardline dynasties, the Almoravids and the Almohads, crossed the strait to save Al-Andalus and enforce a much stricter form of Islam on the locals. This escalation led to 1212, when a rare coalition of Christian kingdoms united for a single campaign. At the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, they broke the back of the Almohad army in a decisive, bloody engagement. The Almohad defeat broke the central command that had coordinated the South's defense. Isolated and unable to pay for professional reinforcements, Muslim governors could only watch as the Christian advance absorbed major cities like Córdoba and Seville, leaving only Granada. By the mid-1200s, the nature of the war had shifted. For the survivors in Granada, military dominance was gone. Survival now relied on walking a political tightrope through bribery and diplomacy. Through heavy tributes and clever negotiation, the rulers of Granada managed to maintain their independence for an additional 200 years, even as the Christian kingdoms grew more powerful around them. That balance ended when Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile married, merging Spain into a single, centralized power. They launched a ruthless 10-year campaign to finally close the noose around the last Muslim territory. On January 2, 1492, the last Muslim ruler surrendered the keys to the city. After nearly 8 centuries of friction, the Reconquista was complete. But this victory left Spain with a hyper-militarized society that had been optimized for conflict over 25 generations. They had a massive, battle-hardened army and a religious fervor with no remaining outlet. Spain had become a specialized machine for conquest. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella took that momentum and handed it to Christopher Columbus, exporting 8 centuries of military zeal directly across the Atlantic to the Americas.